Rome did not die in one day. But on one morning in 44 BCE, the blade entered its heart. The victim was not a foreign king. He was not an invader at the gates. He was Julius Caesar, the most famous Roman alive. He had conquered Gaul. He had crossed the Rubicon. He had defeated Pompey. He had forgiven enemies who once wanted him destroyed. And still, they came for him. Not strangers, not barbarians, his own senators, his own allies, men who had eaten with him, smiled at him, accepted his mercy, and called themselves defenders of freedom. They raised their knives inside the heart of Roman power. And when Caesar fell, Rome did not become free. It became something darker. By the time Julius Caesar rose, Rome was already afraid of itself. The Republic loved to say it hated kings. Its oldest legends praised the men who drove monarchy out and swore Rome would never bow to one ruler again. But legends could not hide the truth. Rome had grown too large for its old bones. Its armies were no longer just loyal to the Senate. Its generals had become heroes to soldiers who followed them for land, money, and glory. Its streets could turn violent in a single afternoon. As a young man, Caesar learned that politics in Rome was not a debate. It was survival. He grew up in the shadow of civil war and dictatorship, when Sulla marched on Rome and showed every ambitious man what power could do. Caesar never forgot the lesson. Rome spoke the language of law, but underneath it understood force. Caesar was not born as the richest man in Rome. He did not have the safest path, but he had something more dangerous than comfort. He had instinct. He understood the Roman crowd better than almost any man alive. He knew how to appear generous. He knew how to create spectacle. He knew how to make ordinary Romans feel that he was fighting for them against a cold, arrogant elite. To his enemies, this made him reckless. To the people, it made him magnetic. Debt followed him. Scandal followed him. Rumor followed him. But attention followed him too. And in Rome, attention could become power. Then came the alliance that made the Republic tremble. Caesar joined himself to Pompey, Rome's celebrated general, and Crassus, Rome's richest man. It was not a friendship. It was a weapon. Together they bent Roman politics around their ambitions. Caesar took Gaul and turned it into a theater of glory. For years he fought beyond Italy, leading Roman legions through forests, rivers, sieges, and brutal campaigns. Forests burned. Tribes resisted. Legions froze in winter camps and marched through mud toward enemies who knew the land better than they did. Caesar wrote about his victories as if history itself were listening. And it was. Every report from Gaul made his name larger. Every captured banner made Rome speak about him. Every victory made his soldiers more loyal to the man who led them than to the distant Senate that feared him. But every victory in Gaul created a problem in Rome. Caesar was becoming too great to return as an ordinary citizen. His enemies knew that if he came home without command, they could prosecute him, ruin him, and end him. Caesar knew it too. So the question became terrifyingly simple. Would Caesar obey the Republic and risk destruction? Or would he break the Republic to save himself? In 49 BCE, Caesar reached the Rubicon. It was not a mighty river. It was not grand enough to look like destiny. But Roman law made it sacred in another way. A general crossing it with an army into Italy was committing rebellion. When Caesar crossed, he did not just move an army. He shattered the line between Roman politics and Roman civil war. Pompey fled east, carrying the old order with him. The Senate's defenders called Caesar a tyrant. Caesar called himself the defender of his rights and dignity. Rome watched as its two greatest men dragged the world into their conflict. At Pharsalus, Caesar defeated Pompey and shattered the last illusion that the old republic could control him. Pompey was murdered in Egypt before Caesar could decide his fate. Caesar wept, or at least wanted Rome to believe he had. In Alexandria, Caesar found Cleopatra, another ruler fighting for survival in a world where weakness was fatal. For a moment, Caesar stood not just as a Roman general, but as a man whose choices could decide kingdoms. When Caesar returned to Rome, he tried to look like a victor without looking like a king. He pardoned enemies. He gave honors. He promised order after years of chaos. He filled offices, launched reforms, settled veterans, adjusted calendars, and moved with the confidence of a man who believed history had chosen him. But mercy did not calm Rome. Sometimes mercy humiliates the men who receive it. Some senators owed their lives to Caesar, and that debt burned like shame. They had fought him. He had spared them. Now they had to stand in his presence and remember that their survival was his gift. Statues rose. Honors multiplied. His face appeared in places that made old Romans uneasy. In early 44 BCE, Caesar was named dictator for life. The title was legal. The message was terrifying. Some wanted to offer him a crown. Caesar refused it in public, but suspicion did not need proof. To many senators, Caesar had become the thing Rome was built to resist, not a king in name, something worse, a king without the word. The conspiracy did not begin with one simple motive. Some hated Caesar, some feared him, some envied him, some convinced themselves they were saving liberty. Among the conspirators was Marcus Junius Brutus. His name carried a dangerous memory. Romans connected his ancestry to the old Brutus, who, according to tradition, helped drive out Rome's kings. Whether Brutus saw himself as a liberator, a patriot, or a man trapped by his own name, history has never stopped asking. Cassius sharpened fear into action. He understood that many senators were waiting for someone else to say what they already felt. If Caesar lived, they believed, Rome would kneel. If Caesar died, they imagined, the Republic would breathe again. That was their dream. And their blindness. They thought removing one man could undo decades of corruption, military loyalty, class anger, and political violence. They thought a knife could repair a broken world. On the Ides of March, Caesar walked toward the theater of Pompey. Warnings surrounded him. Omens were remembered later. Some sources claimed his wife Calpurnia begged him not to go after troubling dreams. Others described warnings placed in his hands too late to save him. History is not certain about every detail. What is clear is that Caesar went. The conspirators surrounded him beneath a statue of Pompey. It was a cruel place for the end. Pompey, the rival Caesar had defeated, seemed to watch in stone as Caesar's friends closed in. The first blade struck, then another, then another. The man who had survived battlefields, storms, rivals, and civil war found himself trapped in a circle of Roman senators. Ancient writers later claimed Caesar looked at Brutus and spoke words that became legend. Some say the famous phrase was shaped by later storytelling. What matters is not whether the exact words were spoken. What matters is the wound beneath them. Betrayal hurts most when it wears a familiar face. Caesar fell at the base of Pompey's statue, bleeding onto the floor of the republic he had conquered. The assassins stepped outside and expected Rome to thank them. They called themselves liberators. They believed the old order would return. But the city did not rise in joy. It froze. The people had not asked for Caesar's murder. The soldiers had not forgotten Caesar's victories. His name did not disappear with his breath. It grew louder. Mark Antony turned grief into fire. Caesar's heir, Octavian, turned inheritance into destiny. The assassins had killed the man, but not the forces that made him possible. Civil war returned. Brutus and Cassius would die. Antony would fall. Octavian would become Augustus, Rome's first emperor. And the republic Caesar was accused of killing would finally vanish under a new name. The tragedy of Julius Caesar is not that he was innocent. He was ambitious. He broke laws. He crossed a line no Roman general was supposed to cross. He gathered honors that made freedom feel unsafe. But the men who killed him were not pure either. They feared tyranny, but many also feared losing their own power. They spoke of liberty, but used murder as their argument. They believed Caesar's death would restore Rome. Instead, they had killed the republic they claimed to save. Because Rome's sickness was older than Caesar, older than the crown he never wore, older than the knives that found him. Caesar was not the beginning of Rome's collapse. He was the moment Rome could no longer hide it. And in the end, the assassins did not stop monarchy. They only cleared the road for an emperor.